Walter Williams. He's a National Operations Manager. So we're here just to discuss some things with you all today about this big travel day we have coming up. And we're going to have to watch a video. But before all that, we're ready to have discussions. We're going to go over some myths. We just want you to know what air traffic controllers do, what the weather system does, what Tech Ops does. This is a whole motor. One band, one sound.
That's right.
So, it takes more than one. But we're going to go ahead and get to this video. So we just go over some general things right now with you all.
This is the FAA's Air Traffic Control System Command Center. It's a 24/7 operation that conducts the symphony of all air traffic movement across the entire country. On any given day, we ensure that over 45,000 flights move safely and efficiently through U.S. domestic and oceanic airspace, working to minimize delays and congestion caused by severe weather, heavy flight volume, and even space launches. At the Command Center, we keep the national aerospace system safe, secure, and moving.
If you have just joined us, welcome to the FAA Summer Travel Live event. And I'm Jamal Lofton, JTOC Air Traffic Specialist. Beside me, I have Wes Atkins, National Aviation Meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And beside him, I have Walter Williams. He is a National Operations Manager here at the FAA Command Center. And again, what we're doing today is going over this live event where we're getting the flying public ready for the busiest travel day this year on Thursday. And we just want you to know what the FAA does to prepare for these busy days. We have them all throughout the year. We have Super Bowls, we have World Series, we have the NBA championship, but Thursday is going to be the biggest day of the year, the busiest. So we want you to know what we do behind the scenes so you can get to your point A to point B safely. All right. So we're going to be taking questions. But before we take questions, I'm going to go over some myths. So prior to me having this job, I had no idea what an air traffic controller was, period. And I'm quite sure a lot of you guys are like, why is this guy going over the weather and he's an air traffic controller? He's outside doing this. False. That's not an air traffic controller. I don't know what he does. I don't know his job title, but it's not air traffic control. But I like him guiding my plane from point A to point B once we land. So air traffic controllers, another myth about it. I have a list of them right here. So another myth about air traffic control, the people that do know about air traffic controllers, they typically think that air traffic control are only tower controllers. False. It's myth. Air traffic controllers have a en route environment, they have a terminal environment, and they have the tower. Terminal and tower, pretty much the same thing, but we have three different phases of air traffic control: the TRACONs, en route, as well as the towers. Something else I just got sent in. Airplanes can fly above thunderstorms and hurricanes. Not really. You see his face? He's a weather guy.
Right.
You know
no
what?
one wants to do that. No.
You know what? Let me go back to my introduction. I forgot somebody who's very important, and I forgot him. Clint Henderson, he's not in the room with us. That's Clint. Clint Henderson is the managing editor and the points guy. He's a big deal. He's a big deal. We're going to get back to these myths.
Nice to see
not all
you.
about you either. So it's about the flying public. We're all here so everyone can know what's going on and what we're doing. Airplanes can fly above thunderstorms and hurricanes. Airplanes can not safely fly above storms or hurricanes.
Right.
Always. Storms can reach up to 45,000 feet.
Even higher than it, yeah.
And most commercial planes can only fly up to 30 to 40,000 feet. So if you have a storm that's reaching up to 45,000, we're not going to let you go over that storm or through it. Weather stops all air traffic. False. So in the military, back in my heyday, when I was in the military, when the planes are not equipped with weather radar. So when they have storms, all the military planes are on the ground. My first day in the FAA, seeing a storm, I was working at Albuquerque Center. I learned that's not the case for the FAA. And that day, that was the most challenging day in my career up to that point with weather, because we are jumping through hoops, trying to make it happen for you all to get to your point A to point B safely. Weather is a big deal, and the show keeps going because you still want to get home. You still want to get home from vacation. You still want to get home from work to see your family or go on vacation. Rockets launch straight up into space. False. Rockets launch at an angle. So a launch path or trajectory is usually at an angle. So that's false as well. Also, another myth, only the FAA has input about ground stops based on weather. False. Airlines can request a ground stop based on volume or other factors. Recent example, we had an airline in San Francisco that had a power outage. They said, hey, we're not able to get these aircraft off the ground. We're not able to take anymore. They have a power outage. We need a ground stop. And we're going to discuss that, and we're going to do what's best for everybody. So at times, airline can say, hey, we have weather going on in Dallas. All these aircraft are in Houston, and we don't have the terminals for them. We cannot absorb anymore. We need a ground stop until this weather clears out. That happens. All right. So now we're going to get into these questions.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't hear, I'm Clint Henderson from The Points Guy. I cover all things airlines, aviation, ground transportation, and we do a lot of coverage of the FAA. I think you guys are doing a remarkable job considering all the plane traffic that's up in the sky. And so I'm just going to take you guys through a few questions from the average traveler's point of view. So first, I want to start with, and any one of you can take this. What's the general weather outlook for this summer?
Well, I'm going to take that. My name's Wes. I'm a meteorologist at the National Weather Service. Summer is typically a big convective season. Convection is just another word for thunderstorms. You get lightning, you get updrafts, you get turbulence. All of that is bad for planes. So we typically look at the areas in the east. That's where mainly the convection happens. We could be looking at convection across the northern tier, like from the Midwest on into the East Coast. Florida is always a big center for convection. Walt's shaking his head, he knows. So any place next to the Gulf of Mexico, you're going to get a lot of that moisture, a lot of instability. It's ripe. Here in the next week, we're probably going to be pretty busy in Florida, not unexpected, right? And periodically, we'll have some thunderstorms from the Midwest into the East Coast. Won't be all the time. Florida, probably every day. Texas, especially South Texas, so Houston might be more prevalent. Dallas, it looks to be sheltered in the next few, maybe a week or so. So that's good news for them. Atlanta, Charlotte looks to be relatively sheltered. But we're going to study that northern tier, the East Coast, and the deep south along the Gulf of Mexico. That's kind of be our problem areas. And incidentally, the last few days, it's been the desert Southwest. We've had a lot of thunderstorms in the desert Southwest where they don't typically get it. So Vegas, Phoenix, Arizona, that kind of area. So that's where we're going to worry about thunderstorms the most. We've got ceilings on the West Coast occasionally, but that's generally a morning thing. And of course, we're going to be looking at hurricanes. And this is expected to be a really heavy hurricane season for the Atlantic. Now, the good news is the Pacific's going to be really good. Right. So plans to Hawaii are good. But going down to Florida, the Gulf Coast, probably later when the hurricane season ramps up in August, September, travel up and down the East Coast, we'll have to watch.
It's another reason for people to pay close attention to the weather forecasts, both at their local airport and wherever they're going, their destination. So good stuff.
That's a great point.
Yeah, good stuff there. How does the FAA work with the National Weather Service?
So I guess I'll take that question. Walter Williams, National Operations Manager. We basically work with Wes and the rest of the team, the weather team that we have here at Command Center. We also have weather team members out in the field facilities all across the country. We're continuously getting updates about the weather forecast and projections, and that's when we go into talking with the field facilities and go into where we need to implement any type of traffic management initiatives to keep your flight moving from point A to point B safely and efficiently.
And how does the weather impact your flight? So sometimes you'll see at an airport, the skies can be perfectly clear. It can be nice and beautiful outside, and yet the airline says, "Sorry, your flight's delayed because of weather." Explain a little bit about that back and forth and why that might be.
Sure, I can take this one again, Clint. I actually have a video that I can queue up that shows a weather day in South Florida.
Roll that beautiful. There it is.
All right. So this weather video right here shows the whole country. As you can see in the center of the country, we do have thunderstorms that started to develop from the Gulf of Mexico up to the central Mississippi Valley. So if you're flying from Atlanta to Los Angeles, well, aircraft are not going to want to go through those thunderstorms, and we don't want them to go through the thunderstorms because they would provide an unsafe operation. That's not what the FAA is about. We're about safety and efficiency first and foremost. So we will reroute those aircraft. So just imagine if you're on a highway or interstate. So we have a bunch of imaginary highway interstates in the sky. And we will take those aircraft from Atlanta, reroute them north of that thunderstorms, and then back southwest going to LA. So that's that's one of the tools that we use, reroutes, route structures to keep the planes moving and keep them safe.
And what else does the FAA do to keep passengers safe?
So other things we use as far as especially in congested areas like the Northeast or Florida, we'd use capping and tunneling. We also use escape routes. I also have a video to show, and I can explain as well with that. So this is a video of capping. So we use this when we have thunderstorms that make aircraft detour because we have arrival and departure gates into major airports. So sometimes the thunderstorms can impact the arrival gates, which makes the departures have to depart through the arrivals go into the departure gate, should I say. So we would cap the departures below the arrivals at least 1,000 feet because that's the policy that we set forth, and it's safe with the 7110.65. That's one of the FAA policies that air traffic controllers use. And then once they get 5 miles laterally separated after passing each other, we would climb them.
And how does the FAA prepare for storms and special weather events?
So once again, with Wes and his team, we're having ongoing discussions every day. We already are planning for tomorrow's weather impacts today. So we have a planning telecom where all of the FAA facilities join, as well as the airlines, and we put in possible initiatives that we may have to use, whether it's ground stops, ground delay program.
No, I think we just lost your mic. I'm not hearing you guys anymore. Let's see. I'm not sure how to solve that. I'm not hearing you, but I'm hoping the audience is. So I'm going to move on. Okay, they're giving me a 1 minute. So we have lots of good questions to ask you guys still. So hopefully we can get the audio resolved. We're working on a resolution, folks. Just bear with us. Technical difficulties. Stand by, please. Let's see. Still not hearing you. All right, so I can tell you a little bit about how we cover storms at the Points Guys. So I am a huge fan of online weather tracking apps and flight tracking apps like Flight Radar 24 I use, Flight Aware, but you can even just Google if you're ever curious about your particular flight and the situation that you're going to find yourself in when you get to the airport. You can literally just Google the airline and the flight number, and Google will tell you if your flight's on time, and it will also show you where your plane is coming from. So I like to use those tools, Flight Radar 24, Google Flights, and even one called Flighty that I've written about that I really like to track flights, incoming flights. And I'm hearing some audio now, so I wonder if you guys, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
All right. Hey.
All right, we're back. All right.
Yeah, we're back. This is live. It's live. So hey,
live
thank
TV,
you for your
folks.
patience. Thank you. We apologize for the technical difficulties. Everything's back, but back
all right.
But go ahead.
No, let's talk a little bit about delays and cancellations. So I was just talking about some of the flight tracking programs that I use personally to check. I like to track where my plane is coming from. So I think that's a big trick and hack for folks out there. But what do you do to prepare for and solve for delays and cancellations once they start happening?
So once again, going back, talking about whatever the airport can handle at that time. Like you mentioned, a great point. As a passenger, I'm guilty of it myself. Before I got into the FAA, I'll be looking at it's clear. I was going, why is my flight delayed?
Right.
But like you said, looking at their aircraft, because it could be your inbound flight, wherever it's coming from, if it's impacted by thunderstorms, weather, any type of weather phenomenon, sometimes maintenance comes involved or anything like that. But we prepare by putting route structure as well as terminal initiatives, which basically focus around the airport, directly around the airport. So we'll look at if an airport can only handle a certain amount of aircraft per hour versus their normal rate, that's where we have to implement what we call a ground delay program, which basically allows arrivals to come in as well as they can still depart aircraft in a safe manner. It doesn't cause surface congestion, because we don't want you to be just sitting out on the tarmac or the taxiway waiting till you get to your gate. So we want you to be able to come in, land safely. And the only thing we want you to be worried about, okay, what I'm gonna do as soon as I get to my destination.
So, and let me go in further to what Walter was saying, talking about the weather impacts. Earlier, he touched on highways and interstates in the air.
Yes.
Weather shuts down highways and interstates.
Yes.
So when weather shuts them down, you have to go on an alternate route. Typically, when you're going on an alternate route, it's going to take you longer. Yes. So when it's taking you longer, you're getting to your airport later than expected.
Right.
And there could be a storm that's 300, 400, 500, 600 miles away from you that's impacting your flight. Yes. So now everything slowed down because of these highways and interstates and the sky being closed off. So now when those are closed off, what we're doing here, we're having conversations with the airlines as soon as we know that these highways and interstates are going to be closed off. And we're going to have those conversations every other hour and in between, if needed be, to let them know, hey, these are the constraints that we're facing today because of the weather. So we're trying to get everybody on board as soon as we can, so everyone can have a good picture of what needs to happen, so we can get everyone safely, because number one goal is safety.
Yes.
Safely to their destination.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So I wanted.
Go ahead, Wes. Sorry.
Oh yeah. I wanted to piggyback off the question, because your question to Walt about how does the weather service and the FAA work with the weather. I wanted to give you the weather behind the scenes. So one thing about working with these two professionals and everywhere behind me, as well as everyone out in the field, there's a lot of communication for this job. FAA is constantly in communication with the weather people saying, you've given me this weather, I want to know what's going on here. Jamal spoke about alternative routes. they're constantly looking at alternatives
Yes.
in the face of whatever I'm throwing at them or the weather people are throwing at them. So it's all about communication, and it doesn't stop with the weather people.
Right.
We are talking to the stakeholder meteorologists, the meteorologists at United, the meteorologists at Delta, Alaska, American, so forth. All of these airlines and all the weather people out in the regions, the centers out there,
Yes.
like the folks who look at Florida on a day in, day out basis. So we're getting and kind of co-locating and somewhat debating what's going to happen, because there's like 80 different opinions, and we're trying to get the consensus opinion to drive it
Yes.
to Walt, to
Yes.
drive it to Jamal,
Yes.
so that they can have the best consensus weather information possible for your safety, for the efficiency, to try to get these people to where they want to go. And so that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes we get it wrong.
Right.
But they've had the best information possible. So sometimes they'll get, hey, Wes, this isn't working out. What do we do now?
Right.
And I'll tell them what we think now,
Right.
and then they will make that decision based on what we do.
I have a couple
Like
questions.
Wes-
Sorry, go ahead.
I would say, like Wes was saying, like, yeah, sometimes the weather forecast can be wrong, and we pivot to another traffic management initiative or anything that we need to do to help aircraft that have to go on detour, or like you say, a roadblock. We may go into a roadblock, and we have to have those aircraft tactically reroute around the thunderstorms.
And Wes, who gets the final say? So if and maybe you can explain a little bit about how the airlines all have their own weather departments. If there's disagreement, do you get the final say in making a decision about whether a storm is navigable or not?
Sure. We put out something called the TCF. It's a convective forecast. It comes out every 2 hours. The public can actually access that on aviationweather.gov if they want to. But it's essentially a thunderstorm density forecast for an area. So I know today out there, they're looking at thunderstorms over the Mississippi Valley that might impact Chicago later on. So that might impact routing out of the Southwest gate. So if you're coming from Texas to Chicago, there might be some delays based on that thunderstorm forecast. The airlines are part of this. Sorry, I should say the airline meteorologists are part of this. The Weather Service meteorologists are part of this, both in the centers in the field as well as here. I'm part of this when I'm working. And so we give that best forecast possible. There's a lot of different debates that go into this. And I'm allowed to say, Walt, this is the TCF. We're expecting these medium thunderstorms over Illinois, but in my opinion, it might be less than that. And Walt can take that, well, it's on the board. A lot of people disagreed with Wes, but he kind of knows how I operate. There's a lot of communication in this room. Personalities, we all communicate differently. So they can, and if there's a difference of opinion, you know, Walt may say, I'm going to wait and see how this weather develops because we don't really know. There's differences of opinion out there. But on the other hand, if I'm saying this convective forecast is right, believe me, then he can say, okay, we're going to take that to the bank and we're going to deviate around it and plan for it.
Right.
And the conversation with the Weather Service is continuous.
Yes.
It's not a hey when you walk in the door and goodbye at the end of the day. It's throughout the day we're having continuous conversation. And not only in the command center, but in the individual facilities as well.
Right.
So the different en-route facilities that we have worked in and things of that nature, you're having weather briefings. You're talking to the weather unit. You're asking them, hey, how does this look for the arrivals in this bank? So, like, not only here at the FAA Command Center are you having these conversations, but in the field at different facilities, they're having that same conversation.
Yes.
And each airline also has their own weather department, right?
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
And they're not beholden to what we drive, but they participate in it. And sometimes I will call on them and say, hey, you're forecasting something slightly different. What is your reasoning? So we kind of learn from each other. It's very communication oriented.
Yes.
We got one drive, and that's to get you there safely and efficiently.
Yes.
Just a personal question. I've noticed sometimes at airports, there's the skies are cloudy. Say there's thunderstorms predicted. Planes are landing and taking off normally, but then all of a sudden there's one lightning strike and the airport just shuts down. I wondered if you guys can explain why that happens and what happens next in that situation.
In that situation, Clint, basically what's going on, it's not only just on the air traffic control side with the FAA, but even at the airport itself. The ramp agents, which that's what we was talking about earlier, those are ramp agents. They are told by their bosses or whoever, they have actual alarms and signals that tell the ramp agents and the baggage handlers to go inside. It's the same thing here. Once we see that lightning strike or we hear about it, we get a phone call immediately from the field facilities, like Jamal was mentioning, and they call me or call my specialists and call my team members, and that's when we implement a ground stop, which means we stop all arrivals and departures into their airport. And once we gauge on how long, I'll talk with Wes, we'll talk and find out how long is this thunderstorm going to be there, because we want to maintain a safe operation. We don't want anybody to get affected by it.
Do you extend those in 15-minute increments or half-hour increments, or how does that work usually?
We extend it hourly. So we'll do an hour ground stop, and then once we gauge, okay, this weather system is going to be gone in 30 minutes, we may even cancel that ground stop earlier. But we extend as much as possible, and if need be, if this thunderstorm is going to stick around for a while, and it's going to affect arrivals, say just if that thunderstorm is directly over the airport, but it's moving east, and it's affecting the arrivals coming in from the east, that's when we'll, as an after ground stop, cancel it and go into a ground delay program, because now one of the arrival gates from the east, or both of the arrival gates, have been shut off because of the thunderstorm. So that's when we have to reroute the aircraft around to the west gates to help out. And the airport can only handle so much.
Yeah. So I certainly appreciate all you all are doing. And I think it's interesting from a consumer point of view too. We talked about sometimes when there's delays and cancellations, you get a traffic jam at the airport and you get planes stacked up. But there is a rule from the federal government that passengers have to be let off a plane after 3 hours. So it's interesting to see how that rule went into effect, and a lot of airlines said that it was not doable, but it seems to be working pretty well. So another interesting little consumer's perspective there.
Yes.
Let's talk a little. I'd love to hear from each of you just really quickly. What is your general message right now for this summer's travel? Jamal, you want to start?
All right, I'll start. Safety first. So use sunscreen. Is abnormally hot everywhere, it seems like. So just be safe. Take your time. Leave for the airport and plenty of time for you to get there. You know, domestic travel is usually 2 hours. International travel is usually 3. I've taken a couple trips this summer. So hopefully everyone else gets to take a couple trips as well. But safety first. You know, just look at the weather. Plan your trips. I got a trip planned for the end of August. There's no way possible for me to know what the weather's going to look for end of August, but I can continuously look at the weather and try to stay updated and be prepared for my trip. And that's all you can do as well.
How about you, Wes?
Sure. As a weather person, if you have the ability, which not everyone does, and not everyone has this proclivity, but if you want to leave early in the day, that might be good, because the weather happens in the afternoon and it's a compounding effect. So if you're leaving at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the thunderstorms are getting ready to pop up, then there's a risk. So what your parents said, get out of bed early to rise early to work, whatever. That's good advice. I don't follow it all the time, but I depend on these guys to get me safe, so it works. But that's what I can say as advice.
My flight says 7, by the way.
So I think we're going to go to the viewer Q&As now, and we'll start with a question around delays. I think we'll probably end up getting a lot of questions around that. Someone asked, can you explain why I've experienced a flight delay when there are no storms or other bad weather at the airport?
So flight delays happen for many reasons. Right. It doesn't have to be because of weather. There could be construction going on at the airport. There could be power outages. There could be other technical issues that's going on that's causing delays at the airport. And it could be many other various reasons for delays besides, it could be equipment issues with the airplanes. You know what I mean? So it doesn't always have to be about weather. There's numerous ways why there could be a delay.
And sometimes I know that the airlines, it might not be weather where you are. It might be weather where the plane is coming from.
Exactly.
So
Yes,
you could
right.
have a serious fog situation in San Francisco where
Right,
there's a ground stop and the planes can't take off. Well, your flight to Albuquerque is on a plane that's now stuck in San Francisco. So if you're in New York, just because the weather's clear in New York doesn't mean that the weather is clear where your plane is starting from.
Right. And it's a domino effect because it might not be that plane. It could be like 2 planes down the road.
right.
Yeah, especially if you have an evening flight.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which is
or-
another good reason to take the first flight of the day because your
Right.
plane is usually in the right place.
Right. And you have crew rest issues with the pilots as well. They have so much time they have to have off. And sometimes weather impacts that spills into the next day.
Exactly.
We have another question. Does a thunderstorm automatically mean that a plane can no longer fly, or is there a way pilots can navigate around storms so flights aren't disrupted?
So yes, there is a way that planes can navigate around thunderstorms. On real time, when a thunderstorm is developing, the air traffic controller may get a message from the pilot saying that they see this thunderstorm developing within 20 miles while they're in flight. So they ask the air traffic controller, can they deviate around the thunderstorm? And the air traffic controller will make sure, after scanning their scope, making sure that everything is safe, they will allow the aircraft to deviate. But once we see that, and once the field facility reach out to us here at Command Center, and they're like, hey, this thunderstorm is going to continue to build, grow, and going to cause multiple flights to deviate, that's when we implement initiatives like reroutes and route structure to get all these planes in a line away from the highway that's being blocked by the thunderstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Clint, and I'm going to piggyback off of that. So one thunderstorm isn't super important.
Right.
It is important if it forms right over Newark. We'll let that be.
Yes.
But at the same time, if it's over, I don't know, Indiana, pilots can deviate around. FAA has systems that they can deviate around.
Yes.
It's multiple thunderstorms. It's density of thunderstorms. So if you get a cluster of thunderstorms that forms over, I don't know, Western Pennsylvania in the middle of the afternoon, then chances are your routes to New York from California are probably going to be impacted.
Exactly.
So that's when they get worried and concerned and more initiatives.
Right. And the one thing I was going to say earlier, I know you mentioned, Clint, about what's the message. The message that I would give to travelers for the summer: patience. Just be patient. Be patient from when you arrive at the airport with the baggage claim, the ticketing agent, TSA, the gate agent. Once you get on the plane, the pilot, the flight attendants, we are all working in a symphony. The national airspace system is a challenging, dynamic, ever-changing airspace. I mean, we're dealing with all type of complexities, and we work together constantly to make sure that you get to your destination safely and efficiently.
One band, one sound.
That's
safety.
right. One band, one sound. Safety.
Yeah.
Safety. But yes,
I mean,
be patient.
It really is, when you zoom out a little bit, the fact that we can get on a metal tube and fly across the country in all sorts of weather and situations with crowded skies, it really is miraculous. And it's a testament to how hard you all are working. So it is noticed. And we tell people all the time at the Points Guy, pack your patience. You got to be nice to people because they're all trying to get you to your destination. Nobody wants you to miss a meeting or miss time with your family.
That's right. Put on that smile. It may help out.
Yeah.
I might get first class.
So we have another question. Are there times, and we've touched on this a little bit, but are there any times during the day or night when flights are less likely or more likely to be affected by weather?
The morning.
Morning. Yes, morning.
Morning.
You're saying
Sometimes
to travel in the
overnight.
morning, or
And
you're saying
overnight as well, like
Red-eyes.
the red-eye flights, because that's when the heating, and Wes can definitely explain that a lot more with the weather and the heating and everything. But yes, definitely, like you said, the morning, and I would say overnight with the red-eye flights. If you're flying from LA to the East Coast, or the West Coast to the East Coast overnight. Your flight's probably not going to get delayed.
Yeah, most thunderstorms start in the afternoon and they continue through the evening. They'll diminish, so they're least prevalent overnight and in the morning. So that's when you want to fly if you can.
Yeah. And another reason is flying overnight and early in the morning. The volume is lighter. There's not as many airplanes in the sky during those time frames.
Yeah, but then you have to take a red eye. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's why you put on this smile and maybe get first class upgrade. You can just lay out.
We have another question. How do you determine how long ground stops or delays last?
So that's where I'm talking with my team members. We talk with the field facilities. We talk with the tower at the airport, and then the TRACON, which is directly overlying the tower airspace, and then of course the center, which is the en route facility that overlies the TRACON and helps you out when you're at your cruise altitude. So we have discussions and we talk with them, and if they feel talk with Wes, as well as they have meteorologists at the centers. So if you're affected in Washington, D.C., for example, at DCA with thunderstorms, we'll talk with Potomac TRACON, we'll talk with Washington National Tower, as well as Washington Center, and then they will help let us know because they're right there in the midst of it. The tower and the TRACON is right there. They have the radar systems as well. We know what's going on, and the tower can provide us an update of how long this ground stop needs to last, and we go off the facility because they're right there in the midst of the fire with the thunderstorms and everything.
Mm-hmm. Someone else says, I've heard of hurricane season, but are there other times of the year when certain weather conditions are more prevalent?
It depends on the region of the country.
Right.
So in certain regions, you can expect thunderstorms. You can expect north winds. Different regions of the country, you can expect strong winds, 100-knot winds, so on and so forth, this, that, and other. Which, say, for instance, I used to work at Albuquerque Center, and there were thunderstorms during the storm season daily that they were sparse, and we were able to maneuver the aircraft through it. There were sparse thunderstorms, so there were holes that were not full where you were able to help airplanes pick their way through it. But to most of the traveling public, it was not raining in Albuquerque. So they had no idea what we were facing when we went to work every day. So there's a lot of things that you deal with as an air traffic controller per se that the flying public has no idea, because when you have 100-knot winds coming from the north, when you have to turn an aircraft, that aircraft is going to be faster than anybody else in the sky, and you have to make up for that. So there's a lot of adverse things that happen across the country different pockets have different things.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say that once we go into the winter, the colder months, we start to worry about the strong winds in the atmosphere. So it takes longer to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. Mm-hmm. There's also the potential that all those winds kind of, build up some turbulence over the Rocky Mountains there. So we have to worry about turbulence a lot more. Yes. And of course, snowstorms, which I will say, everything that I've seen in this place, the whole airplane system are built now to accommodate these snowstorms. Yes. I mean, airlines are canceling flights. They know that we're not going to be able to take off. Right. So you'd rather be delayed rather than risk all these icy conditions. Exactly. So everything works good for the weather. Convection is a different beast. Yes. It's harder to predict. Right. I mean, I'm losing my hair. This is the tough season for us. So yeah, this is the really tough season for us. It deals with. I mean, you hear the expression, well, if a butterfly flaps its wings in Texas, then you get a thunderstorm over South Carolina somewhere. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of studying that minutia to try to pinpoint where they are. And a lot of times, even among this consensus of the enterprise of weather, we get it wrong. Yeah,
it's kind of like what Wes was saying, Clint, just basically with snowstorms, they're easy to predict, and that's why the airlines can adjust their schedule. And like I say, even in the winter months, we're also concerned with the wind as well as the low ceilings, which is low clouds at the airport. visibility conditions, which can affect pilots' ability and the controller's ability to land the normal amount of aircraft that they would normally do. So we're looking at all that, and like how he mentioned turbulence, one of the things, analogies I use and that's why not only the flight attendants and the pilot, and we also say keep your seatbelt fastened for unexpected turbulence. If you think about turbulence, it's like, if it's consistent, it's kind of like driving down a gravel road. But every once in a while, if you hit that pocket of air, it's like hitting a pothole in the sky.
Yeah.
So we just want you to keep that seatbelt fastened.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, and we've all seen the videos of people who've been hit by clear air turbulence. But I want to touch on something you mentioned, Wes, which is the jet stream, which I've been the victim of flying to California and on a 7-hour flight from New York. But I've also been the beneficiary going across the Atlantic to London, where the flight can be 5-6 hours. Pretty remarkable. It sometimes can take me less time to get to London than it can to San Francisco. So pretty remarkable there.
Pretty remarkable. I used to live in Alaska, so I totally get it. I was flying to the east a lot, so sometimes it took you much more than you bargained for, and other times, like, wow, I'm already here.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Well, I think that's.
Go ahead. One other point about this, like, whole synthesis of operation. I remember working a particular, I know Jamal mentioned strong winds. It's not just about the winds, but it's how they evolve and shift directions, because then there requires a runway change at certain big airports, and that requires holding and just juggling all that timing and knowing when to do it and not knowing when to prematurely do it and all that stuff. So, and then we've got a whole staff in Kansas City, the Aviation Weather Center. They're constantly looking at areas of turbulence in these storms, volcanic ash. God forbid if we have something from St. Helens or somewhere in Alaska, Rainier. And we've got people looking at clouds and ceilings and so forth, all these people, and they're constantly looking at 24 hours. And I remember briefing, there was a certain time when Chicago needed a runway change, wanted to know where to hold these flights, but we're concerned because east of Chicago, we were forecasting a lot of turbulence. Right. They didn't want to hold those planes in that area of turbulence, and that was a good thing. Yes. So I don't remember what you did, but you didn't do that.
No, we didn't do it.
Everything worked out great.
That's where, we reach out to the facility once again, Clint, and reroute those aircraft. Once Wes gives me the update, and like how you're speaking of with the winds, changing the runway configurations, that happened yesterday. If you was flying into LaGuardia or Newark, you got a delay because of the gusty winds impacting the runway configuration at LaGuardia and Newark. They couldn't operate at their optimal performance because of the winds. And so that's why we got them here on site so they can keep us up to date and we can keep you guys moving.
One last question from the audience. What are the differences between summer and winter for you all and what you do?
I think we lose our hair more in
Yes,
summer.
we do. Yes, we do. For me, from my perspective, as a national operations manager, like Wes mentioned, thunderstorms, the unpredictability with it. He tries to predict as much as accurately he possibly can, but sometimes it's tough. At least, and that's the thing with summertime, those pop-up thunderstorms, because of the heating, the atmosphere, everything. But in the winter, I know they're gonna have ski country volume. People want to travel out and go skiing. I know that's gonna happen. So a lot of the stuff that we implement in the wintertime is because of volume. In the Northeast, they want to travel to Florida because it's nice and warm. It's not too hot. And so they want to fly that. So I know those are going to happen every winter. I know that every day I come in, unless it's something like an anomaly, should I say, that I know I'm going to have to put some route structure out to help keep the arrivals going from the Northeast into the Florida market, because people want to vacation, or down to the Caribbean. They want to go to those nice warm areas while it's cold in the Northeast. And then, of course, I know at the airports in the Northeast, the Midwest, the ski country, and all the colder areas, we're going to have de-icing, which is going to make your plane, delayed, because they got to de-ice those planes, because as you climb, it gets colder.
Yeah, and Florida has a dry season in the winter, so that's good for flying.
All right, Jamal, we'll take us home, please.
All right, we just want to say thank you all so much for your time.
Yes.
Again, that's Clint. I'm Jamal. This is Wes. This is Walter.
Appreciate you.
And what we want you all to know is that it's about safety. So if you, like Walter said, pack a smile.
That's right.
So what we're trying to do is make sure you're getting from your to your destination and from your destination safely. So bear with us. As we say, we don't always get it right. You know, sometimes the weather goes left instead of right. You know what I mean? All the projections can show you. We all look at the hurricanes. We all look at it when we see all these predictions going left and then they go right.
Yeah.
Thunderstorms are the same way.
Yes.
Thunderstorms are going to happen. You know, just pay attention to the weather. Pack your patience. Pack your smiles. You know, thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
Thank you for being involved in this event. Thank you all for listening to us.
Yes.
And just give us some feedback, what we can do, any questions you all have. Maybe we can do another one of these live events.
Yes.
Let us know how Thursday goes for you. Let us know. And that's all we have.
And enjoy your summer travel.
That's right. Enjoy, everybody.
Keep up the
And thank
good
you
work,
so much,
guys.
Clint.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. Appreciate
Bye
you.
bye.
All right.
All right, take care.
Everybody have a good one.